What's going on, everybody? It's your boy, Scott Proctor, alongside my guy, Matt Moore, per usual. We're back with another episode of Simple Question, but this time we'll have more than one because we got a special guest joining us today. He covers the Green Bay Packers for the Packer Day podcast and also the Packer Report, Andy Herman. Thanks for joining us, my man. How you doing?
Hey, I'm doing great. Thanks so much for having me. Excited to talk some Packers with you guys.
100%. It's a good time to do so. Obviously, coming off the heels of Aaron Rodgers announcing that he's going to return to the Green Bay Packers after a tumultuous couple of seasons in terms of off the field. I want to start here. How did this deal finally come together on Tuesday, and why are there still so many unknown details of this deal? For example, the terms of Aaron's contract.
Yeah, so I think, Aaron sort of had this deadline of yesterday that he kind of imposed on himself to try to give, I think, not only the Packers, but Davante Adams, the Packers free agents, et cetera, as much information as possible that they could have before they have to make these decisions on Davante Adams' franchise tag, who they want to keep on the roster, if players want to come back to Green Bay or not. So I think he kind of imposed that on himself of wanting to make a decision prior to the end of the franchise tag deadline. I think that's part of the reason why we don't know a ton of the details, right? I think as far as they've sort of gotten is that he's going to play this season. And then now it takes obviously putting together a contract. We knew even last week that Russ Ball and, Rodgers agents were working towards this in case this would come to fruition. But, these are very complex contracts, especially when you're talking about very likely highest paid player in football, highest paid quarterback, et cetera. So, and also in a situation where Green Bay needs to save as much salary cap space probably this year and next year as they keep this Rodgers window open, trying to win a championship. Doesn't behoove anyone to put a massive contract on the books for this season or next season if they're obviously trying to win a Super Bowl. So I think just trying to get those things sorted out of how they can make this a high money deal, highest paid player in football, but at the same token, not make it so that it's super exorbitant, on the cap these next couple of seasons.
Yeah, and Andy, to your point, as far as it's a win now situation, bringing Aaron Rodgers back is one thing, but then also being able to bring back Davante Adams, this automatically makes them contenders. But would you put them right now currently as like the top team in the NFC, or is it still Rams and then Packers, and then there's a bunch of question marks as far as Tampa Bay with a quarterback and whatnot?
Yeah, to me, it's Rams and Packers, right? And it's tough to really make it. I mean, listen, San Francisco just beat Green Bay in Green Bay with Jimmy Garoppolo at quarterback. So as much as I'd like to say it's Packers and Rams, the 49ers certainly have a say there as well. I expect there to be a first-time quarterback in Trey Lance, which complicates things. Maybe that's better than Jimmy G. Maybe that's worse. It's tough to know at this point. I'm sure there's going to be a couple of teams that step up probably out of nowhere. There's going to be some additional moves. Of course, we've seen some other quarterback moves happen already. I think you look at the state of the NFC, even if you go back to the playoffs last year, that's a huge reason why Green Bay wanted to go all in again, is they looked at the state of the NFC and said, there's no reason why Green Bay can't be the best team and can't be the representative in the Super Bowl this upcoming season. The Rams, of course, will have a lot to say about that. As I mentioned, other teams will as well. But when you look at the top five quarterbacks in the NFC right now, you could make an argument that the top four quarterbacks in the NFC or the AFC West are better than the top four quarterbacks in the NFC as a total. Like right now, that's how crazy it is. Yeah. You're talking about what Kirk Cousins, Kyler Murray, Dak Prescott, Rodgers, and Stafford as being probably your top five in the NFC. Maybe Matt Ryan's in that conversation. And I know it's more than just quarterbacks, but the NFC is pretty barren at the moment, and Green Bay is right there with anyone to have a chance to win it this season.
So we're talking about quarterbacks, and obviously the Packers have another one on their roster not named Aaron Rodgers. Where does this whole situation leave Jordan Love, the quarterback that the Packers not too long ago traded up to draft in the first round? Where do you think the Packers go from here with Jordan Love? Is it a trade? I'm hearing, obviously, I'm sure the Carson Wentz just was traded to Washington. Is Indianapolis a possible landing spot for Jordan Love? Where do you see that situation right now?
I think there's a few things that are going to, sort of make this Jordan Love conversation very interesting. I think the first is Aaron Rodgers' contract and how confident Green Bay is that he's going to play for maybe 2 to 3 more seasons. Yeah. We just heard from Pat McAfee that Rodgers legitimately was thinking about retirement this past season. So even if things go great this season, that still has to be a possibility that Rodgers could retire at any moment. And if you get to that point, you still want to have something that you could lean on and say, all right, at least we have this developmental quarterback on the roster that we can move to. You don't want to be in the situation where you're a Washington football team needing to trade picks for a Carson Wentz and give him a massive contract, right? So I think that's the first thing that Green Bay has to decide. I think the second is, how do they feel about Jordan Love? Have they lost faith in him over the last couple seasons? Do they feel like maybe he's not going to be able to be the guy? And if that's the case, they're probably more likely to move on. I think third is, what's the appetite around the league for Jordan Love? If the Colts come calling with, second round picks or a player, things like that, then yeah, I think, if you would have asked me in the past 30 seasons, with whether it was Ron Wolf, Brian Gutekunst, Ted Thompson, any of those guys, if any of them would have taken a first round pick, it really traded a first and a fourth round pick up to get Jordan Love, got no use out of them for 2 seasons, and then flipped them for a second or third round pick, I would have said, you're out of your mind. That's not Green Bay. But everything right now is unprecedented for Green Bay. Doing void years, they never did it before. They've done like 11 of them in the past year, and there's probably 11 more to come in the next week or so to get them under the salary cap. Going this far out in deals and putting money way into the future has never been something they've done before. Giving power to Aaron Rodgers, where he can literally request that they trade for Randall Cobb and probably pick his quarterback's coach, is something that they've never done before. So these are literally unprecedented times for Green Bay. And if they can get a player that can help them these next couple seasons, where they're going to be short on salary cap space and they need as many cheap assets as they possibly can to fill out this roster and make them a contender, if that opportunity presents itself for the first time maybe ever, I might say, yeah, I think they might consider doing that.
Well, and kind of going off of that, on a scale of like 1 to like the LA Rams, as far as mortgaging not just your salary cap but also your draft capital to really win now, where do you see the Packers at right now? Because like you said, they're not that organization usually, but they've kind of just thrown caution to the wind.
From a salary cap standpoint, I think it's very easily arguable that they went about as much all in last season as they possibly could. Right. So I think they're very much willing to say, we're willing to mortgage the future. We know that 2024, 2025, 2026 are probably going to be pretty ugly, but we're going to try to win a Super Bowl before that happens. But to your point, one of the things that they haven't done is gone ultra aggressive in saying, all right, these picks need to be, maybe if not traded for players that can come in and help right now, at least selections that they feel very confident. Now, to be fair, Josh Myers, Eric Stokes, Royce Newman, a lot of these guys came in and contributed in their rookie season, but you could make an argument that, hey, some of these 4th, 5th, 6th round picks, try to use those to move up in the draft, or maybe get some cheaper veterans on cheaper deals. Like, I think there's still an opportunity for them to go, more all in from a trade standpoint, and just using some of those future assets to try to get as many players on the roster that can help them win right now.
That makes a lot of sense. Andy, I got a 2-part question for you, because obviously there's going to be a lot of gymnastics to get under the cap, stay under the cap, but obviously they have to still try to improve this roster where they can. Who are some names that you expect to be a casualty of this situation in terms of not returning to the Packers? And then on the flip side of that, who are some names or even just some positions that the Packers should be targeting this offseason?
Yeah, so the 3 names that I think right now that I would be the most concerned over Green Bay potentially not keeping, the easiest to me is Zadarius Smith. I just think that he ultimately gets released. He's a ton of money. He had the injury issue all last year. There seemed to be a disconnect between him and the team. It's just really difficult to see a potential scenario where he's back right now. But I am a little surprised that hasn't happened already. So maybe there's some hope there that maybe they can work something out, but that would be one. Another player, I think Rasul Douglas, I think they'd love to have him back, but I think they have 2 huge resources in Jair Alexander and Eric Stokes already in that cornerback position. And I think if Douglas is willing, is able to get a big contract out in the market, I think they're probably going to let him take that elsewhere. And then I think MVS is another where I think some team's going to give a major contract to MVS. And I don't think Green Bay is going to be able to match that or be in the conversation for that. So those are the 3. As far as where Green Bay needs to go from prioritizing things, I think Devondre Campbell needs to be a major priority for this team and this defense. And then the other one is, you look at the weapons right now and you start really strong, right? You've got Aaron Rodgers, Devontae Adams, Aaron Jones, AJ Dillon. That sounds really great. And a lot of teams would love to have those caliber of weapons as your top 4 guys. However, after that, MVS probably gone. Randall Cobb may be back on a cheaper deal, but they certainly can't keep him on the deal he's on right now. Equanimeous St. Brown's a free agent. Alan Lazard's a restricted free agent that has a really interesting decision. You've got Robert Tonyan, who's an unrestricted free agent. Mercedes Lewis, who's on a contract that you might not be able to keep. So you look at it, and after those first few guys, now you're looking at Amari Rodgers, Josiah DeGuara, like, the talent pool at weapons, whether it's wide receiver, tight end, et cetera, becomes very thin, very fast. So I think whether that's bringing some of their own guys back or addressing that in the draft or free agency, getting Rodgers some more weapons, I think is going to be very paramount to their success this upcoming season.
Yeah. And, I was listening to your podcast, Andy, and you made a point that reminded me of something that Rodgers had said. And it was the fact that he wants to recruit people. Do you see that happening in the next few weeks? Is he going to be a little bit more aggressive, or are the Packers going to let him recruit some weapons to kind of help him get that ring and maybe get some guys that are just chasing a ring?
I'm sure that Green Bay would love to see Aaron Rodgers do some recruiting for them. However, they're going to make him go out with like 2 hands and a foot behind his back because Green Bay doesn't have any money to spend. So they're going to say, hey, you go out and you recruit as many people as you possibly can for veteran minimum deals. Like, you go talk to Von Miller and see if you can have him come here for about as cheap of a deal as you can possibly have. So yes, I do. And I think they'll probably do something similar to the last offseason where they're able to bring in a Devondre Campbell and a Dennis Kelly, some guys on cheaper deals that maybe aren't quite vet minimums, but not too much more than that. But they just don't have the money to spend. And I think whatever money they do have is going to be spent bringing back a Devondre Campbell, extending a Preston Smith, probably extending an Adrian Amos, those sort of moves. So yes, I'm sure they would love him to do that. I'm sure they'd love to see him maybe convince a couple guys to come back on cheaper deals. But again, he's going to be a little bit limited into just how much he can convince people to come here when Green Bay doesn't have any money to spend.
100%. Andy, I probably got like one last question for you before we let you get up out of here. Obviously, Aaron's news wasn't the only news to dominate the NFL news cycle on Tuesday. Russell Wilson headed to Denver is obviously a topic of conversation. What do you make of that change of scenery for Russell? And I'll ask the question this way to maybe settle a little debate between Matt and I. Who do you think is more likely to appear, maybe win a Super Bowl this season, the Green Bay Packers or this new look Denver Broncos led by Russell Wilson?
Yeah, I'll answer the second part first. I think Green Bay, simply because of like the AFC West in and of itself, is a nightmare to navigate. And while I think Denver's going to be really good with Russell Wilson there, love that move for Nathaniel Hackett. And I'm really excited to see what Denver can do. You're in a division with, what I think will be an improved Raiders team. And then of course you've got, Patrick Mahomes and KC, you've got Herbert and the Chargers. Like, it's just going to be a very competitive division. Even if you get through that, oh, by the way, you still got Josh Allen and the Bills. And then, the Bengals show that what they can do with Joe Burrow. So, and there's others as well. So that's a very tough division and a tougher conference. So I think Denver's just got more to navigate. Whereas we just talked about Green Bay, it might be LA and Green Bay, and that might literally be it. So I will take Green Bay in that situation. But I love the deal for Denver. I think it makes so much sense. I know that Denver gave up a lot. I actually think Denver got the better end of that deal. We see how hard it is to get quarterbacks in this day and age, and like to find really good quarterbacks. And I know some in Green Bay were saying like, well, maybe that's what Green Bay could have got for Aaron. To me, Russell Wilson has more value than Aaron Rodgers at that age, with not threatening retirement, and more years on the deal, cheaper years on the deal. To me, that makes more sense for Denver. So they get a younger, like a quarterback that again is not threatening retirement, that can come in and run that offense and be a really good team for the foreseeable future. Love that deal for Denver. And Seattle's been awful at drafting over the really since they got DK. Basically since Russell. Like, it's been a long time since they've been good at drafting. So I'm not sure how much a bunch of draft picks and Noah Fant moves the bar if I'm a Seahawks fan. Love the deal for Denver. I think Seattle's got a lot of work to do to try to get back to where they were a handful of seasons ago.
100%. I agree about loving the deal for Denver. Obviously, you mentioned it. The path of less resistance is certainly in the NFC, but we just saw the last 2 Super Bowl champions come out of the NFC. So we'll see how this plays out. And actually, I had one more question for you, Andy, because you piqued my interest when you mentioned a name. That was Nathaniel Hackett. Yeah. Tell me about what you think about his fit in Denver now with Russell Wilson, and kind of how important he was really to what the Packers were able to do under, his tenure running that offense.
Yeah. So I think the thing I love about Nathaniel Hackett, I think the best leaders are often ones that can be ultra serious, but have fun at the same time. I think it's really tough to toe the line and have that balance of it's going to be fun to come to work every day and we're going to enjoy this and we're going to have fun. But at the same token, we need to be the best that we can absolutely be. And there's a standard that we set. And if you don't meet that standard, we don't get to have fun and there's going to be problems, right? I think Nathaniel Hackett's going to toe that line very well and be a tremendous leader. I think it's going to be a very laid back, casual, fun atmosphere, but with standards set with that standard to be excellent. And I think he's going to be able to do that very well and be a very strong leader. I think he has a very great offensive mind. I think he not only knows the old school West Coast offense, obviously, which is his background, but I think he has his own unique spin on it. I think he learned a lot from working with Matt LaFleur and taking really aspects of not only the Shanahan system, but the McVay system as well that Matt LaFleur knew, along with Matt LaFleur's spin on it. And then he also gets a little bit of that, Aaron Rodgers and Mike McCarthy spin on it as well from working with Luke Getsy as well as Rodgers for so long. I think he's just going to have a tremendous offensive background. I think he's going to motivate very well. I think players are going to love playing for him. I think it's an amazing hire for Denver. And now you pair him with Russell Wilson. Yeah, it's a tough conference and a tough division, but man, look out for Denver. I think they're going to be a really talented and fun team to watch this year.
100%. Love that insight, Andy. And thanks so much for joining us today. You were awesome. Everybody go check out Andy's Twitter. Go check out the Pack a Day podcast. Show that some love. But that's going to do it for us. For Scott Proctor, Matt Morris, our guy Andy Herman. We'll catch you next time on Simple Questions.